Are you guys an English literature student and you are preparing for competitive exams like UGC NET, GATE or other university courses? Then this video is going to be for you. So hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to learn some of the 100 key literary terms that is very much essential for any English literature students. Why? Because it's going to form your backbone while you are preparing for any English literature exam. Also, it's going to provide you with so much of assistance while you go through any English literature work. So without much delay, let's start our video on 100 key literary terms. So first, let's learn about some of the fundamental key literary terms that is very much essential for every English literature student to know. So let's start our video with general literary terms with some definition and examples to understand better. So our first general literary term was allegory. So allegory is a story that often has deeper meaning or it often shows some symbolic involvement. For example, if you have read George Orwell's Animal Farm, it has a deeper meaning that is related to Russian Revolution. Next we have alliteration. So alliteration is the repetition of the consonant sound that is being repeated at the beginning of each word. For example, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So you can see that the P sound was repeated in every word. Okay, next there is allusion. So allusion is an indirect reference to history, literature or culture. For example, he met his Waterloo. Here Waterloo is defined, or Waterloo suggests the Napoleon defeat. Okay. Next, there is ambiguity. So ambiguity is when a word, phrase or statement, it has multiple meanings. Okay, one statement or one word, you can interpret that word or that particular sentence to multiple meanings. Maybe you can, if you hear a word, you'll have a different meaning and I'll think about a different meaning. So ambiguity is when a word, phrase or statement has multiple meanings. Next, there is anachronism. So anachronism was when something appears in the wrong historical period. For example, a clock in Julius Caesar, which is set in ancient Rome. Next, there is analogy. So analogy is the comparison between two different things to explain an idea or to give an idea. Okay. Next, there is antithesis. So antithesis is a contrast of ideas in a parallel structure. For example, it was the best of time and it was the worst of time. So it was a quote from Charles Dickens' novel Two Cities, A Tale of Two Cities. So antithesis, you can see that what I said, it is a contrast of ideas in parallel structure. So it was the best of the time and it was the worst of the time. Best and worst was provided here to define the contrast of ideas. Okay. Next, there is aphorism. So aphorism is a concise statement of general truth. For example, actions speak louder than words. So it's often a true statement. It's a universally true statement that action definitely speaks louder than the words. Okay. Next, there is archetype. So archetype is a recurring symbol or character type in literature. For example, the hero, the anchor, the mentor, they provide a symbol or character type in literature. Okay. Next, at last, we have cliche. So cliche is an overused phrase or idea, like the phrase happily ever after. So it's a cliche idea. Means it's an overused phrase that is used mostly and it's sound not so much true. Okay. So it's a cliche. Okay. So this is all about the general literary terms. Now, let's learn about some of the poetic devices or literary devices that enhance the poetry and our writing style. So first we have caesura, means it is a natural pause in a line of poetry. For example, to be or not to be, that is a famous quote from Hamlet. Next, it means that it is a question, to be or not to be. Okay. Next, we have enjambment. So, enjambment is a sentence that continues beyond a line break. Whereas we learned that caesura is a natural pause in a line of poetry, whereas enjambment is a sentence that continues beyond a line break. For example, T.S. Eliot Wasteland. If you read the whole poem of T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, you'll know what I'm talking about, what enjambment is. Next, there is consonance. So, consonance is the repetition of the consonant sound. Like example, pitter patter. Okay. Next, there is assonance. So, assonance is opposite to consonance. So, assonance is the repetition of the vowel sound. For example, the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. Okay. Next, we have onomatopoeia. So, onomatopoeia is the words that imitates the sound, like the bees buzzed. I banged onto the door. The water splashed. So, splash, bang, buzz, hum. These are the words that represents a sound. Okay. Next, we have rhyme scheme. So, what is rhyme scheme? Rhyme scheme is a pattern of rhymes. There is a pattern, that is a particular pattern of rhyme in a poem. So, that's the pattern of rhymes in a poem is known as rhyme scheme. Okay. So, for example, A B A B A A B B. These are the patterns we have in these are the rhyme scheme we have in a poem. Okay. Next, we have meter. So, meter is the rhythmic structure of a poem. For example, iambic pentameter, that is very much famous for Shakespeare's sonnets, Petrarchan sonnets. So, these are some of the sonnet types that represents the meter. Okay. Next, we have elegy. So, elegy is a poem of mourning. Means when we mourn over someone and we write a poem for that, it's considered an elegy. So, for example, we can take Thomas Gray's elegy written written on a country church. It's a famous elegy written by Thomas Gray. Next, we have sonnet. So, sonnet is a 14-line poem with a specific rhyme scheme. For example, Shakespeare's sonnet follows the rhyme scheme that I talked about earlier. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, pattern. So, it's a sonnet. That is a 14-line poem with a specific rhyme scheme. Okay. Next, we have free verse. That is poetry without a set meter or rhyme. As I already said, in poetry, there is a set of meter and rhyme scheme, but in free verse or in blank verse, there is poetry without a set meter or rhyme scheme. For example, if you read Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, we can analyze and see what free verse actually I'm talking about. Okay. So, we already learned about the poetry, some of the key literary terms that is associated with poetry and writing style. Now, let's learn about story. So, every great story follows a structure. So, let's discuss about the essential terms or essential key literary terms that a story follows. First, we have plot, that is the sequence of events in a story. Next, there is exposition. So, exposition is the introduction of background information that the story provides. Next, there is rising action. So, rising action happens when events that build tension that lead the story to a perfect climax. Okay. Next, we have climax, that the turning point of the story. After climax, we faces falling action, that events follows after climax. Next, we have denouncement. So, denouncement is the resolution of the story. Okay. Next, we have foreshadowing. So, foreshadowing hints about the future events that is going to happen in the story. For example, in Romeo and Juliet, Romeo's dream of death foreshadows that actually Romeo is going to die in that particular story. Okay. So next, if we talk about flashback, so flashback is a scene that is set in the earlier time or in the past. Okay. Next, there is irony. So, irony is a contrast between expectation and what reality in actual. For example, a fire station burns down. It's an irony. A fire station, what actually a fire station do? That whenever there is a fire in any other area, they go and distinguish that fire. But it's a ironical statement that the fire station burns down. The fire station can actually, it's impossible for the fire station to burn. Next, we have unreliable narrator. So, unreliable narrator is a narrator whose credibility is questionable. For example, if you have read The Catcher in the Rye, you'll notice the character of Holden Caulfield, and you'll see that why I'm saying that why I'm saying actually what an actually unreliable narrator is. So we learned about poetry, we learned about some elements or key literary terms that is attached to story. Now let's learn about some of the figures of speech that add depth and beauty to the language. So let's explore a few of figures of speech, because I have already made a separate video on figures of speech. I'll provide the description, I'll provide the link in the description below. You can check that whole video on figures of speech. But here, as key literary terms, I have tried to provide some of the most asked figures of speech in our exams. So let's start our figures of speech with metaphor. So metaphor is a direct comparison without like or as. For example, time is a thief. We are directly comparing time to thief. Next, we have simile, that is exactly opposite to metaphor. So simile is a comparison using like or as, whereas in metaphor we compare two different things but without using like or as. But in simile we use the words like or as to compare two different things. For example, as brave as a lion. For example, she is as brave as a lion means we are comparing her to her bravery to a lion, but with the words by using as or like. Next, we have hyperbole. So hyperbole was when we extremely exaggerate something. Means, for example, I have told you millions of times not to do this. It actually that is impossible to say millions of times, but we exaggerate it and say that I have told you millions of times not to do that particular work. Next, we have personification. So personification is giving human-like attribution or human-like qualities to non-human things. For example, the wind whispered. The wind actually cannot whisper, but here we are providing the wind to some human-like attribution to make the environment to sound to make it something more peaceful and serene. Okay. Next, we have synecdoche. So synecdoche is a part that represents a whole. For example, all hands on the deck means we are talking about the sailors, not just hands of the people. Okay. Next, we have metonym. So metonym is a replacing a word with something that is closely associated with it. For example, the White House issued a statement means the Vidhan Sabha or the Lok Sabha, they issued a statement. Okay. Next, we have oxymoron. So oxymoron is a phrase that combines the contradictory terms. For example, bittersweet. Please remember that oxymoron is a phrase that combines two contradictory terms. Bitter and sweet, they are quite opposite words, but we combine them, and that happens when we use the figures of speech oxymoron to highlight something. Okay. Next, we have the something similar to oxymoron, that is paradox. So paradox is a statement that seems contradictory but reveals the truth. Means less is more. So less is more, we say when it is a statement that seems contradictory but reveals the truth. Less, more, these are two opposite terms, but when you combine them in a sentence, they reveals that it is actually true, that the more, the less is more. Okay. Next, we talk about litorts. So litorts is using a negative way to express something positive. Okay. For example, not bad. Instead of saying good, we use not bad. So not, it becomes a negative. It specifies to something negative. So not bad, using a negative way to express something positive. Instead of saying good, instead of saying she is very good in cooking, we can say she is not that bad in cooking. Okay. Next, we have juxtaposition. So juxtaposition is placing two contrasting ideas together. For example, it was the, as I already said, it was the best of time, it was the worst of time. Means there was best, there was worst, and we combine them to contrast ideas together to imply something or to figure something. Okay. So it's known as juxtaposition. So drama and theatre, they are the most essential part of our English literature. So they bring stories to life on a stage. So we must know some of the key literary terms that is associated with drama and theatre. First, let's start with soliloquy. So soliloquy is a speech where a character speaks their thoughts aloud. For example, to be or not to be, when Hamlet spoke his thoughts aloud by saying the dialogue to be or not to be. Next we have monologue. So monologue is a long speech by a character that he delivers in a stage or on a drama. Next we have aside. So aside is a short comment that is spoken to the audience that the other characters they can't hear or they don't hear. Okay. Next we have tragedy. So tragedy is a serious drama which often end in a sorrowful manner. But in we can take Hamlet by Shakespeare. Again, it's a very famous tragedy by Shakespeare, which ends in a which have a sorrowful ending or which have a tragic ending. Next we have comedy. So comedy is a humorous play that is often end with a happy note. There is a very famous play, The Importance of Being Honest by Oscar Wilde, which is a great comedy. Next we have catharsis. So catharsis is the emotional purgation of the emotion or the experience that they have, that the audience have. So catharsis is the emotional release experienced by the audience after seeing a story or after witnessing a scene. Okay. Next we have hamartia. So hamartia is related to tragedy. So hamartia is a tragic flaw in a character that we find as the story progresses. Next we have Hervis. It's a term that is associated with the tragedy. So Hervis is the excessive pride that leads a character to its downfall. Okay. Next we have Deux ex machina. So Deux ex machina is a sudden and improbable resolution that we faces in a drama or in a story or in a stage play. Next we have stage direction. So stage direction is the instruction in the script for the movement or how your movement should be, how your tone should be, how you should deliver the dialogue. So it's known as the stage direction. So next we have I'm telling you some other literary terms that is associated with drama and theatre, that is chorus. When a group of performers they narrate or comment on an action, often it is associated with Greek mythology. Okay. Absurd theater, we can talk about absurd theater. This is a famous term that is associated with our postmodern literature or modern literature. So it's a style of drama that focuses on meaningless, as our day-to-day world was going to the meaningless exploration. It focuses on that. It's a style of drama that focuses on meaningless. If you have read about the work Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, that is a very postmodern work, that is a very famous postmodern work, you'll know what absurdity that the plays or that the story that provides us. Okay. So do you people often wonder that why some characters lives in our hearts when we read about a story or about a particular work, and some other characters they fade away? So character plays a vital role or important role to shape a particular story. So here are some of the most important about characters' names or the terms of characters that we need to know, even if we are a writer or a student or even just curious about literature. Okay, so let's first start with our types of characters with protagonist. So protagonist is the main character that often was considered as hero. For example, if you have read Harry Potter series, then you can know that Harry Potter was the main protagonist or the main character in that Harry Potter series. Okay, next we have antagonist, which is completely opposite to protagonist. So antagonist is also known as the anti-hero. We can say as an anti-hero. So it is the opposing force or it's considered an villain. For example, Voldemort. If you have read Harry Potter, you can know that if Harry Potter is the main protagonist, then Voldemort was known as the antagonist or the villain in that particular play. Next, we have the foil character. So, what's the foil character? A foil character is a character who contrasts with the protagonist to highlight their traits. For example, if you have read Sherlock Holmes, you must all have read Sherlock Holmes in your school time. You have known the character Dr. Watson. So, he was known as a foil character who contrasts with the protagonist to highlight their traits. Okay. Next, we have the round character. So these are some of the main terms. Now I'm coming to the secondary characters. So let's start with dynamic character. Dynamic character, like they change throughout the story due to their experience. For example, in Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, you can see that Ebenezer Scrooge, he was known as a dynamic character. Next, we have a round character, that is the well developed and complex character. After that, we have flat character. So flat character is a character with a little bit of less complexity than the round character. Next, we have static character. So static character, they remain unchanged no matter whatever happens. For example, if you look at Sherlock Holmes, you'll know what static character I'm talking about. Next, we have stock character. So apart from the protagonist and antagonist, character plays different roles in storytelling. So the stock character, static character, they are also important characteristics that we must know. So stock character is the stereotypical roles like the mad scientist or damsel in distress. These are known as the stock character. For example, the evil stepmother in Cinderella, you can consider her as a stock character. Next, we have another one I'm telling you, that is confident. So someone the protagonist trust and share some secrets with. In stories you can see, or in plays you can see, the protagonist has a friend or a sister or some cousins that he can share, or he or she can share his problems, and they will not judge him, or they will only going to help him. So that's the character was known as the confident. So someone the protagonist trust and share secrets with. Next, we have the anti-hero. So anti-hero is a protagonist who lacks traditional heroic qualities. The protagonist, antagonist, the anti-hero, they are somehow related. Okay, if you remember one term, it will help us to remember the another term. So anti-hero is a protagonist who lacks some traditional heroic qualities. For example, if we talk about Great Gatsby's Jay Gatsby, he is known as an anti-hero. He does not have the hero-like qualities. That is why he is considered an anti-hero. Next, we have doppelganger. So doppelganger is a character's double, often a counterpart. You can see in the films that often the hero, to perform some action, some specific action, they have the doppelganger. But in film, we can actually we'll be able to see that the actual hero was performing the act, but in BTS we can see that the doppelganger was only performing the act. So it's a body double, we can say. So these are some of the name terms of the characters that you need to know, because definitely you are going to teach students, you yourself going to have knowledge so much as you are going to explore further into our. So our literature has gone through so many transitions that has formed some of the literary movements and genres that we know today. So first, let's start our literary movements and genre with realism. So realism represents everyday life and society without romanticizing it or changing the scenario. For example, George Eliot and Henry James, they are some of the most famous realist novel writers. Okay. Next, we have modernism. So modernism is experimented with fragmented narrative and alienation. Means they show some of the, it is a movement, we can say, that focuses on innovation and it is a period which break down the tradition that was relevant, that was very much relevant before. For example, we can take some modernist writers like T.S. Eliot, James Joyce. They are some of the famous modernist writers. In fact, James Joyce's novel start the modernist theme. Okay. Next, we have the postmodernism. So, postmodernism used metafiction, and it came after modernism. So it used metafiction, irony, and it often questions what our reality is. So it's a movement that challenges and structure and the absolute truth. For example, Salman Rushdie, Thomas Pynchon. If you read about that work, you will know how in their work we can find some of the postmodern literature's characteristics. Okay. Next we have the Gothic literature. So Gothic literature is a literature or a story we can see where their dark, mysterious, and supernatural themes are present. For example, Horace Walpole's works, Frankenstein. It's a very famous Gothic literature by Mary Shelley. Next, we have Romanticism. So, Romanticism it's focused on emotion, nature, and it kind of separates itself from the absolute truth. So, Romanticism it's emphasized on emotion, nature, and the imagination. We can say Wordsworth was an most famous romantic poet, Robert Frost, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William Blake, John Keats. They are some of the most important and known romantic writers. Next we have naturalism. So if we talk about the naturalism emphasized on determinism, and social condition. For example, Emile Zola, Stephen Crane, they are some of the most important novelists or writer. Mainly they are prominent in their work were mainly prominent in naturalism. Next, if we talk about surrealism is when literature explores the unconscious mind, what we have in our unconscious mind. When in literature that focuses on what is our subconscious mind was speaking, what our unconscious mind was speaking. It's known as the surrealism. Next we have existentialism. So as I already talked, postmodern literature, in postmodernism they talk about the meaninglessness, the existentialism. So existentialism is the literature that focuses on the individual meaning of life. So it explored themes of human existence and free will. For example, if you read all the works of John Paul Sartre, you'll notice that he was a famous existential writer. And also Albert Camus, Myth of Sisyphus. These are some of the famous stories or novels we can say that focuses on the themes of existentialism. Next we have magical realism. So magical realism, what happens when the magical theme it blends with the reality. So blending reality with some magical elements. We can say that Salman Rushdie was a famous magical realism writer. Next we have science fiction. So science fiction is very much prominent in our today's world. So science fiction is the fiction when stories explores futuristic and technological themes. Means the story or the literature it focuses on futuristic and technological themes. So these are some of the literary key movements and genres we must know. So that's it for our today's video on 100 key literary terms that is going to help you to understand and analyze our English literature better. And if you guys found this video helpful, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. Also share in the comment box if you have any other idea about any other key literary terms. And also let me know in the comment section below which was your favorite key literary term. I'll see you all in a next video. Till then, happy reading and keep exploring literature.